everybody, my name is Susie and today I'd like to share with you a recipe on how to make mulberry jam that is sugar-free or reduced sugar, and it is delicious. Mulberries are in season right now. It is the beginning of July and they've actually been ripe and ready for picking within the last couple of days. And if you don't know what a mulberry tree looks like, if you walk down the street and you see the ground littered with berries and stained by blue or purple juice, that more than likely will be a mulberry tree.
And here there are a couple of ginormous mulberry trees. Look at that. That's a lot of berries. And as you can see, the sidewalks is full of fruit that's dropped from this monstrous tree. There he is. Don't get your feet dirty.
The mulberry trees that are growing in my area, and I'm in Ontario, are the white mulberry and the red mulberry. The red mulberry tree is actually native to Ontario and it's on the endangered species list. The white mulberry tree, so it originated in China and it was used in the production of silk. The mulberry tree and the silkworm's only source of food are the mulberry leaves. And the mulberry leaves are full of vitamins and luckily for us are the food or the food choice for the silkworms to be able to produce beautiful silks. And today I'm wearing my silk blouse in honor of the silkworm. Mulberry trees were actually brought or introduced to America in the 1600s. So this is a very old and necessary tree. Now, all parts of the tree are used in Chinese medicine: the bark, the root, the leaves, and the berries. They each have their own unique medicinal purposes and strengths. Generally speaking, the mulberry is very high in antioxidants and nutrients and vitamins. In 1 cup of mulberries is approximately 60 calories. Fiber, it's high in riboflavin, iron, potassium. It's actually very high in potassium, so if you have liver issues, maybe you want to look at that. And vitamin K, and it's also extremely high in vitamin C. And it's 1 cup of the mulberries has 85% of the daily required amount of vitamin C that you would need for a 2,000 calorie per day diet. So there's a lot of nutrition. The other powerful thing about the mulberry is that it is packed with antioxidants, and one of the most powerful antioxidants in the mulberry is the resveratrol, and that is a powerful antioxidant that fights off free radicals, and that's what helps stave away disease. So that's a very powerful vitamin, or it's a very powerful antioxidant to have in our food. And if you're thinking that resveratrol is actually very high, and it's usually found in very dark-skinned berries, but there's a very high content in the grape, the red grape, and that's why there's a high content of it in red wine. But just to give you an indication, the mulberry has 7 times the amount of resveratrol that is found in the skin of the red grape. So that is very, very good. There are some benefits. They're said to be very good for heart health. They're said to be good for regulating blood pressure, for cholesterol, for fighting off dizziness. And it's also said to be very good for a type 2 diabetes, specifically the leaves for tea or for capsules in order to help reduce blood sugar levels. So that's something that's very interesting you might want to look into if you are a diabetic. Suppress appetite, maybe that's because it's high in fiber. For joint pain, an interesting thing that I read was that it also seems to be helpful with tinnitus. So that's the ringing of the ears. So there's a lot of medicinal purposes, but you're not going to get all those benefits and cure yourself just from eating a couple of berries. So you have to do your research and find out exactly what it is that the dosage that you would need, and get more information just to see if it's actually helped other people. So for this recipe, we're going to need 6 250 milliliter jars with lids. We're going to need, of course, our mulberries.
So we don't have to go too far, just in the backyard. And this is the mulberry tree. And if we come close, all the berries on the tree. And it's just loaded. And we've got all different stages of ripeness: white, red, and black. So let's see, some are ripe, some are not so ripe. So we've got our giant funnel that we're trying to create, which is directly underneath the main branches with the mulberries, and we've just raised a Rubbermaid on an angle. So the hope is that when the berries fall, they will fall directly and be collected in our Rubbermaid bin. Yes. And now we're just going to shake some of the tree, and all the ripe berries fall off. And the ones that don't fall off aren't ripened. So we got to move this over to another part of the tree. Start shaking. Woo! Hey, that's cool. Okay, one more shake, shake. It's working. Yeah, it's working perfectly. That's good. I think we got enough on this side.
We're going to need a package of pectin that is no sugar required. We're going to need a cup of sugar or sugar alternative. I'm using stevia, 3/4 of a cup of unsweetened apple juice, 1/4 of a cup of lemon juice, and then we're going to need a little bit of butter, a pat of butter, just to reduce our foaming at the end, and a couple of tools will be our magnetic wand, which mine is a little warped, some tongs, a spoon, of course a large pot for making our jam, and a small pot to sterilize our lids. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our clean jars, we're going to put them in the oven at 20 minutes. This will sterilize the jars, but I will leave them in the oven the whole time we're making the jam, because we need to have everything hot when we're pouring the jam in order to create a seal. I'm going to take my lids and put them in a small pot with water to sterilize those. So I have my berries in a bowl, and I'm going to use my veggie wash, which I made. And I'm just going to let them sit for 5 minutes, and then I'm going to rinse them off. So it's been 5 minutes, and I'm just going to rinse the berries. And I'm going to leave all the little stems on. And this jam is going to be full of fruit. So it's going to be a coarse jam. And all these little berries and all the little stems, they'll just disintegrate, or they'll soften. You won't even notice them once we actually make our jam. Just clean them the best you can. And this is all the debris that's left over. We have our clean berries. Now we need to measure them out. We need 5. So all we want to do, 5 cups of berries. That's 4 cups. And that's 1 cup. So I've got 5 cups. I have 2 cups of water. And that's it. I'm going to put this on my stove. So now I'm going to bring this to a boil, and then I'm going to turn it down to a simmer. I'm going to put the lid on it. I'm going to leave a crack open for the steam and just let it simmer for 10 minutes.
So that took just a minute to bring it up to a boil. And I'm just going to move the berries around a bit. And I'm going to put the lid on, leaving a little crack for a vent, and I'm going to time it for 10 minutes. Our timer has gone off. That is hot. So there's our fruit, and it's been simmering, and now we can turn the stove off, and we're just going to crush the fruit. And this is personal taste, how much you want to crush it. Maybe you want to turn it into a complete jam where it has very little bits of fruit, or in my case, the fruit is so small, I think it's going to be really nice whole in the fruit. So I'm going to leave it like that. Now we have to let our solution cool until it is at room temperature so that we can add our pectin. Now our berries are cooled, and I'm just going to press them slightly. So we've just short a hair of 4 cups of prepared fruit, but I can just top that off with either a few berries or a little bit of water in order to reach 4 cups. So now we're adding 3/4 of a cup of apple juice and 1/4 of a cup of fresh lemon juice that I've squeezed and I have in this container to bring it up to 1 cup of liquid. So now we're going to add our 4 cups of prepared fruit. And to that, we're going to add our 3/4 of a cup of unsweetened apple juice and 1/4 of a cup of lemon juice. And then we're just going to mix that together. And it's an amazing color. And a lot of the berries are still whole, but depending on the texture you like, you can certainly crush these more, or I'm going to leave some of the fruit whole. I think it'll be nice in the jam. So now we're ready for the next step. So we have our lid sterilizing. I've just brought that to a boil. I'm just going to let it boil for 5 minutes and then turn it off. And I've got my 5 jars sterilized hot in the oven. And I have my cold berries. So now I'm going to add the pectin. You want to add it all at once. And then we're going to stir just to dissolve it in the cold liquid with the fruit. It only takes a couple of seconds to get it really dissolved. And now we're just going to turn that, I got a bit of pectin on the back of my spoon. And now we're going to turn this on high. Got it on high. And we're going to bring this up to a boil, a rolling boil. So I set the timer at 6 minutes. And now we've got our nice rolling boil. We're just going to let it go for another few seconds, maybe 30 seconds. And at this point, we have our solution that's rolling, boil, and we're going to put all of our sugar in at once. And we're just going to stir it in. We're stirring it in and stirring it down. And the sugar will cool the liquid slightly. And we just want to mix it really well just to make sure all that sugar is distributed through all of that fruit and juice. And now we're going to let it come back up to a rolling boil. And once it becomes a rolling boil, we're going to hard boil it for 1 minute. That's our rolling boil. I'm going to set the timer for 1 minute. And we're going to let that boil hard for a whole minute without disturbing it. But if your pot is smaller and your solution starts to rise, then give it a stir to prevent it from overflowing. So that's 1 full minute, and at this point I'm just going to add a pat of butter, and that is going to help reduce the foam to make our jam nice and clear. I'm just going to stir that butter in until it's fully melted and some of that foam is removed. Steaming, but it's looking really good. So now we're going to fill our jars. And I'm just going to do 2 jars at a time. Our sterilized cup. And we're going to scoop out a cup and fill our jar. It's almost full to the top. And we just want to leave a 1/4 of an inch headspace on the top. And we're going to quickly get our lids, and the rim is perfectly clear on this, and we're just going to finger tight, but this is dirty, so we need to make sure that all our edges are perfectly clean on the jar so that we get a perfect seal. And look at that. That's all that's left over. I think that's pretty good measuring. I'll add it. That is what I call good measuring. So we got exactly 5 jars of jam. They are really hot, and I've just finger tightened all of them, and now we're going to leave them alone, and we're not going to touch them for 24 hours. So I'll show you what you look like tomorrow. So this is my previous batch that I left for 24 hours, and it turned out perfectly firm, as you can see. And now we are going to taste our jam. And I have to admit, I've already been into this jar and tasted it before. And we are going to taste it on the famous croissant. I'll just rip a piece off. And I'll show you the texture of the jelly. You see that? It is firm, it's spreadable, and you can see those little tiny stems. They're just soft and they just break up, so they're no big deal. The berry. There are lots of berries, so let's see what it tastes like. It's a whole lot of flavor. It's very tangy and sweet. Now the lemon juice that we added was for tang, because the fruit is very sweet on its own. If you don't like a tangy jam,
then just use a cup of apple juice and omit the lemon juice. But I think it really brings out the flavor of the berries. It just kind of enhances everything. And it's hard to believe that a jam with this much flavor could be sugar-free if you choose to use a sugar alternative. So this is definitely a winning recipe that I will make, and I will continue to be able to harvest. And one thing I forgot to mention is that the berries, they keep ripening at different stages. So as I mentioned before, we've got all the different colors of berries on the tree. So I keep on going out every 2 to 3 days, and I am getting more and more ripe berries.
3 days later, we have our second harvest. And they're getting ready to drop.
So this is the gift that keeps on giving, and the fruit is delicious on its own. New respect for the mulberry tree, giving all the things that it does for us, and it's sweet and it's full of flavor. So that's the mulberry. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you try this recipe and you like it, I hope you share it. Happy mulberry picking. Enjoy.